sometimes when I ask people like, hey, is Israel doing the right thing? The response I get is like, what about Sudan? And what about Yemen? And why are you focusing? And of course they have the right to defend themselves. And I'm like, hold on a second. Like, why can't I ask that question? Why Yuval Noah Harari asked this question is it inappropriate to ask the question, to question whether Israel's response could be too much? Yes, they're defending themselves, but 40,000 people have died. Why can't I ask the question, like, is this the right response? Is there a better way?
I am not the believer that you silence anyone. You can ask any question you like.
Yeah.
That's not the issue here. Of course, you could ask whatever you wish. The question is, the issue here at hand, if I could analyze it, why some people may take offense when you do that is not because of your question, because it sounds like somewhat of the propaganda of the enemy. Because the enemy keeps saying, because there are plenty of people who are anti-Semites, and they say, we're not anti-Semites, we're anti-Zion.
I understand that.
So when I'm not an anti-Semite. So people
I'm not anti-Semitic, and I hope you believe me. Like, I'm not anti-Semitic.
I don't think you are. I think if anything, I would call you more naive than anti-Semitic.
Let's go with that. I'm naive.
No.
I'm anti-Semitic.
I'll tell you the equivalent. You have to remember that after the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews were massacred, and the world was silent. The world was pretty silent.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to. So it shouldn't be surprising that if, let's say, we were right now middle of World War II, 1942, and we hear about the concentration camps, and you'll say to someone, the Nazis are the worst. We have to destroy them. But the Jews are also making mistakes. You understand how that would be taken, right?
So I hear you're making analogies. I understand that some people criticize Israel because they're anti-Semitic. So, but I'm sitting here. I'm not anti-Semitic
because no, the question goes the other way.
I feel bad.
Let's say you're right. Let's say Israel made mistakes. So what's your point? That Israel should stop defending itself?
Well, so just take my question at face value, knowing that I'm naive but not anti-Semitic. So I'm sitting here and I'm asking Rabbi Simon Jacobson.
I know you're not anti-Semitic. Let's make that clear. I don't have any doubt about it.
Let me ask my question. So
you'd not be sitting with me and respecting me if you were anti-Semitic. I know that.
So Rabbi Simon Jacobson, I'm so disturbed by the 40,000 plus Palestinians in Gaza who've been killed in this war. And yes, I know people are dying in Yemen and Sudan. And yes, I know all about the Holocaust. And yes, I know that Iran wants to wipe out Israel. And yes, I know about Hezbollah. And yes, I know about Hamas. And in spite of all those things, I still feel bad that 40,000 plus people have died in Gaza. And so there's a part of my heart that wonders, gee, I'm not a military expert, but is there any way that Israel could be conducting themselves in a way that is not killing so many people? Like, is that a fair question to ask?
It is, but anyone with a little military experience would tell you that maybe you shouldn't be watching so much news.
No. But it's 40. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people.
Okay. Have you corroborated that number is correct?
I've looked at every news source, unless the world is lying to me. I mean, every single news.
But news sources get their information from one place.
But I'm saying every single Israel. It's an Israel source. Israel says that's the number.
My understanding is Israel has never corroborated that number.
So, but you don't believe any number? Well, what number do you believe? What should I look at?
What happens if you... One second. But if Hamas is the controlling government in the Gaza, so when you hear Gaza officials say that 40,000 were killed, why aren't you skeptical? Maybe those same Hamas...
I am, and that's why I look at every other news source in the whole world.
Because the whole world's getting information from the same source.
So who do I believe? You? I mean, who are we supposed to believe?
Anyway, I don't necessarily believe it. You believe whoever you want to believe.
But what number do you believe? What number do you believe, and where do you get the number?
It doesn't make a difference to me. That's why it doesn't bother me.
How many people are dying doesn't bother you?
No, I opened up this discussion that bothers me every time
you do care. I know.
A man, woman, and child dies. Let's not forget.
But what I'm saying is, it's not.
Don't put words in my mouth.
No, I don't want to.
I said clearly. No, why would you even say something like that when I said at the beginning of this program that it bothers me? Why would you even? You think I don't remember what I said?
No, that's not at all what I want to do.
Okay. So let's make this clear. You know, the Nazis told the Germans that the Jews are vermin. And the children in Germany began to believe that Jews weren't human. They were like rodents. And let's say you're a German child, and they say, why shouldn't I be? All the newspapers in Germany say that the Jews are not human. They're like vermin. And they'll say every newspaper. And the answer is yes, when you control the newspapers, you can say anything you like. That's called propaganda. So number one is, I think there's a lot of propaganda, much more than we all can imagine. I don't know the numbers because I wasn't in Gaza and I didn't count them. I'm skeptical about anything. Now, let me say this. There are people who say that October 7th didn't happen. So you're going to tell me, you think I care that newspapers say? I've seen plenty of things in newspapers that I don't think are always accurate.
How do we know what's true? Like, where do we go for the truth?
So let me ask you, that's a very good question. How old are you, if I may ask?
33.
Tell me, how do you find out what's really true? If someone comes to you and tells you how do you find out what's true?
I look at trusted sources from across different sources. So
I look at Times a trusted source, in your opinion?
No. I'll look at dozens of sources to cross-reference and see what the common denominator is. That's how I find truth.
Yeah, but you know there have been frauds in history, propaganda that everybody bought into, and then they found out the whole thing.
So you asked me. So that's how I find truth. So let me ask you: how do you find truth in cases like this?
I'm very skeptical. To me,
I know, but how do you find truth?
Whenever you have whenever you have two narratives, I always know that there are too many agendas. You have the MSNBC narrative and you have a Fox narrative, right? They're very different.
Yeah, and they both say the same thing about the number of deaths. So,
yeah, that's your response to me, and that you think so that makes it a fact because they both say it.
No, I'm lost. I'm lost.
Hold on,
I'm lost.
But they both also say that our sources are the same. It's Gazan health officials. That's the source always. Correct? Did anyone go and objectively count the numbers that you know of? I don't think anyone.
I don't know.
I don't think anyone would be allowed to go there even. So I don't even know what's going on in that regard. Second of all, let me say this to you. The discussion to me is troubling. I'll tell you why. This issue, because why are you, I will ask you this question. Why don't you have equal time about other atrocities? Why did you focus on this one in this conversation with me?
If you were an expert on Sudan, we'd be talking about Sudan.
I'm not an expert in anything. I'm not an expert in anything. I'm not a military. You're not an expert on that. I don't think so.
Israel's near and dear. Israel's near and dear to my heart, and I'm
all these newspaper accounts that you're talking about. They talk about the equal time to the atrocities in other countries. Do you think?
No, they don't.
Why not? If they're such truthful sources,
they don't care as much. Probably.
Why not? Why? Tell me why.
Because the Israel-Palestine conflict is the most well-known, complicated issue in world history, and the U.S. is partnering with Israel, and people are fascinated by this, and they over-indexed on it. Now, of course, it's not a reason to say we shouldn't, investigate it, but it's given a lot of attention. But if I ask a question and someone says, "Well, what about this other issue?" It doesn't seem fair to me. It's like,
no, it seems fair to me. I'll tell you why it seems fair to me.
Yeah,
because it seems disproportionate. Why suddenly is the focus on Israel when Syria killed so many more of their own civilians?
Well, that's also terrible. That's also terrible. I mean, Bashar al-Assad, what he's done is horrible.
Yeah, but
he murdered his civilians. It's horrible.
When I see somebody marching, when I see someone marching for Black Lives Matter, but they don't march when a synagogue has been shot up and innocent people have been killed, I start wondering what their agenda is. Does that make sense? Am I entitled to be skeptical about that?
I would bet maybe they're more concerned about issues that affect them, is my guess. Yeah.
Do you think if the campus presidents on MIT and in Harvard and in the Penn State, University of Pennsylvania, had said when they were asked the question by the Congress, is calling for the genocide of Jews considered to be breaking the laws of your university? And they all answered, it depends on context.
There's anti-Semitism. There's a lot of
No,
anti-Semitism
I'm
in the world.
saying, had they said that about black lives, the calling of blacks to be genocide, do you think they would have gotten away with that?
No.
So there is a double standard here. I think we can
Well,
all
they
agree.
did. They didn't get away. I mean, they had to resign, I think,
No,
right?
that's true. But it would have been a lot. The point that I'm trying to make is this. Let us even say 40,000 people were killed.
Okay.
And as I said at the outset, for me, even one innocent person dead is already too much. So that's very clear to me.
And you have made that clear, and I acknowledge that, and
I'll go a step further. The Talmud says, the Egyptians were like the Nazis. The Egyptians enslaved the Jews for 210 years, and they tortured them and they killed them. You know what happened when the Egyptians were drowning in the Red Sea? The Talmud tells the story. You may be aware of this. The angels began to sing God's praise. Thank God that the enemies are being destroyed. And you know what God says? My creations, my creatures are drowning and dying, and you're singing praise. You should be crying.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Egyptians, we all agreed, were criminals, because we don't celebrate even the death of our enemies. We don't celebrate death. We just don't celebrate death. We cry that human beings have fallen that far. As difficult as many people would find it I would tell you, I cry that there were Nazis in the first place that could stoop to such a level, and the only choice to deal with them was to kill them because they were just beyond the pale. So yes, I cry for every innocent person that either a bystander or collateral damage, whatever it is. And even though in war, it's true, civilians die, you still don't celebrate it.
Yeah.
We don't celebrate.
I didn't mean to
hold on.
Suggest anything.
Let me just finish my point. The problem I have is that too much of the propaganda machine of the enemy is using, in the Wall Street Journal was an excellent article a few months ago. It's part of their strategy. Hamas does not have a military that can match Israeli military. We all know that, right? They can't fight head on. Part of their strategy is to martyr innocent people. And they don't have a problem to perpetrate the biggest war crime, which is to build a military brigade in a hospital or in a kindergarten or in a school. They don't have a problem with that. You and I have a major problem with that. Besides the fact that it goes against all civil laws, but they don't have a problem with that. What do you do with that? And they use that as a strategy. It's part of their strategy that they will embed. They say the reason they can't kill Sinwar, the leader of Hamas today, is because he surrounds himself with children and with hostages. So basically, if you have to kill him, you're going to have to kill all these people around him.
All the death, I just wonder, is it really helping Israel? What if ironically, terribly, Netanyahu is hurting Israel because he's creating more hate?
So here's where I don't agree with this. Scapegoating of Netanyahu to me is
not scapegoating. I'm just saying, what if it's the wrong strategy? Is it possible?
But you mentioned several times that you're not a military strategist.
I'm not.
So why don't you ask military strategists what they think?
I should.
Why don't you interview one of them? I'm not a military strategist.
Yeah.
But why don't you interview a few of them and that are not political? Ask a military strategist. What do you do under these circumstances?
You're right.
So that's what I would answer to that.
Yeah.
I personally don't think that public opinion, time of war, public opinion is not helpful. That's why you have blackouts and stuff, because the public opinion can be swayed. Other people with agendas can use it against, if you're going to bomb a city, you better not call the media there because it's always going to be very gruesome. Let's be honest. War is bloody. Nobody wants to see blood. I think it's no matter what you do, it's never going to be pleasant. How can I say,
Yeah. No, and I apologize from before. I never meant to, like you said, put words in your mouth. I think what I said was, I asked you about the numbers. You said you didn't know. And then I think I didn't mean for this to come off the wrong way.
I think I said, I'm an
Yeah.
adult and I can protect myself. I hope you don't mind. If you say something, I'm going to call you
Please,
out.
yeah. No, no, I absolutely.
I,
So I
as you can
appreciate your
imagine, I've done this before. It's not
Mhm.
like I haven't been on. I've been live in very controversial
uh,
settings and even with hostile audiences. So
oh,
you don't have to apologize. I told you from the outset,
okay.
nothing that you could say is offensive to me, but I will state my position. That's all I'll do. I'm not
I
going
think
to.
that the way that what the
I don't
bias I've
have.
been trying.
Listen. There's nothing you said that I have regrets for being with you on this program.
Oh,
Just
good.
make that
Okay,
clear,
that's
because
great.
what you're saying reflects actually what many people think.
Yeah,
I don't think you're alone in this.
yeah.
Many
So
people do have these questions, and they need to be addressed.
and
So
let me
my
tell you
goal
where I.
is not. I'm not trying to win a debate with you. I'm trying to actually open the
Mhm.
conversation to bring as much perspective to it. That's all I'm
Which
really
is
trying to
very
do.
very valuable. I grew up being taught that Israel was founded on this idea that it was a land for a people without a land, totally diminishing the reality that Palestinians who live there. I grew up being taught that the word Palestine was somehow inherently anti-Semitic until I learned that there's this whole other reality to it, and there are these people that call themselves Palestinians. There were people living there, and they have their version of history, and in some cases, they were left their home, and so there's this other history of people that that have suffered, and I feel like um, it's so important as Jews to acknowledge that that there's yeah, and I know you have, but
Well,
that's my
to be
angle. That's why I try so hard to incorporate this other narrative.
when I was once on a program with a very pro-Palestinian presenter, I just
Because
want
I'm
to tell you
pro-Israel.
what I said to him. I
Yeah.
said to him, the day, I hope the day will come. You have to
Hmm.
acknowledge that you and your people made a big mistake in 1948 when remember, it was the British that controlled that part of the world,
Hmm.
right? The British were pulling out, and that's when the UN made the partition. They gave Israel a few slivers, and they said the rest is for the Arab Muslims that are living there. Had the Arab Muslims,
I've heard the opposite. I mean, I think the Arab Muslims were living there. The partition wasn't a few slivers. There were Jews living there, but Jews immigrated from yeah.
yeah, but there were enough Jews that the UN felt was worthy of giving them so they should have that
Yeah.
separation. If the Muslim Arabs had accepted that peacefully,
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
any resentment, then what would have happened?
More peace. I think a lot of people don't accept when another people wants to come into their land. It's unfortunate. I wish they did.
Yeah, but there's a few things here. First of all, I think everybody agrees the Jews preceded the Muslims in Israel. They weren't there
In,
thousands of years ago. The Jews were. The Jews lived there. Jews always lived in Israel. Even when the Jews were exiled, there were always some Jews in Israel. And I mean, no one can deny that Jewish people have been praying
of
and
course.
saying next year in Jerusalem from how many
It's a
years?
hard pill to swallow if you're Arab living there and you've been there for 5 generations and someone says, "Hey, get out of here. We were here first." It's a hard pill to swallow. You'll say,
Well,
"Hey,
you
my
know what?
great great."
I wouldn't have told them to get out of here. I would say just let's live peacefully side by side. You know,
Yeah.
what do they say about the 2 million Arabs that live in Israel and are doctors and lawyers and judges and on the Knesset? What about those
Yeah.
Arabs? What happened with them?
I think in some cases they're given less rights than Jewish Israelis.
Well,
That's
not that
one
I know of.
thing.
Okay, I'd like to hear
Oh.
one right they don't have.
I know that they're not obligated to serve in the army. I don't know.
Yeah, because
Beyond that.
it's against their conscience. Listen, if they don't want to serve in the army, they don't have to, because they may
Yeah.
say, we don't believe in it. But they're not. But there are plenty of them in the army, so it's not like they're not
Oh.
allowed to. Some of them are judges.
So
Some of them are put
no.
Israelis into prison.
So they can't. I think they can't vote in Israel's legislative elections. To answer your question, it's
One
my
minute, 1 second.
understanding.
There's 3 Arab parties in the Knesset. They have
Oh,
power. That's not
so
true.
maybe this is misinformation.
Check it out. Check it out.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken to Arab citizens in Israel that are very happy, frankly.
Oh,
They wish
so
that their cousins would just stop. They
yeah.
say, now you could say, I don't want to be a minority in a country that's primarily Jewish. That's another story. That's like, there are some people who don't like that. Why should
Yeah.
we? There are 2 million Arabs, and we're living among 6 or 7 million Jews. But that's the reality right now.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for being generous with your time and for getting into this difficult conversation with me. So I hope
I'm happy to have done this, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, honor, and I hope this message, as I don't know what the final product will look like, but everything I've said, I'm on the record. I'm comfortable with, so I hope it helps. The main thing, I hope it helps your listeners.